Imagine standing in front of a single block of stone weighing 800 tons, the weight of more than 500 cars. Now imagine moving it, without cranes, without steel, without engines. Yet the ancient Egyptians did exactly that. Not once, not twice, but hundreds of times. Today, we're breaking down the real engineering behind one of history's greatest feats, and trust me, the truth is far more impressive than the myths. When people see massive stones like the Colossi of Memnon or the granite blocks used in temples, the first reaction is, there's no way humans moved that. But archaeology tells a different story. The Egyptians didn't need lost technology or alien machinery. They had something better: organization, physics, and the Nile River. Let's start at the quarry. 1. Cutting the block. Workers carved channels around the stone using copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and fire and water cracking. Once freed, the block sat on a prepared bed of smooth limestone. 2. Building a giant wooden sledge. For stones too heavy to roll, Egyptians built massive wooden sledges. Think of them as ancient forklifts. The block was strapped inside a wooden frame so it could slide without breaking. One of the most important clues about how the Egyptians moved heavy stones comes from a wall painting in the tomb of Djehutihotep, a Middle Kingdom official. The painting shows a huge statue being hauled on a wooden sledge. 172 workers pulling ropes in coordinated rows. A man standing at the front of the sledge. And, most importantly, he's pouring water onto the sand. For decades, Egyptologists debated what the water was for. Some thought it was ceremonial. Some thought it was symbolic. But modern physics solved the mystery. In 2014, researchers at the University of Amsterdam recreated the experiment and discovered that dry sand piles up in front of a sledge. Wet sand becomes twice as stiff. The sledge glides instead of digging in. Friction drops by 50%. The painting wasn't symbolic at all. It was a technical diagram, a literal instruction manual carved on a tomb wall. The Egyptians were showing us exactly how they did it. This single image explains how teams of workers could move stones weighing tens or even hundreds of tons across long distances. So when we say they poured water on the sand, it wasn't a guess. It's right there in the artwork, and modern science confirms it. With wet sand, the sledge doesn't sink. The runners glide smoothly. Workers pull in rhythm. And the entire system becomes dramatically more efficient. This is ancient engineering at its finest: simple, elegant, and incredibly effective. Here's the part most people never hear about. The Nile wasn't just a river, it was the highway of ancient Egypt. A now vanished branch of the Nile reached the pyramids. Recent geological studies revealed the Aramat branch, a waterway that once flowed right up to the Giza plateau. This allowed Egyptians to float stones almost directly to the construction site. One of the most extraordinary discoveries in Egyptian archaeology is a set of papyri found at Wadi el-Jaf, the Diary of Mira, written by an overseer during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. It's the oldest papyrus ever discovered, and it gives us a day-by-day account of how stone was transported for the Great Pyramid. Mira describes his team of about 40 elite workers. Their boat journeys along the Nile, loading limestone at the Tura quarries, sailing it to the pyramid harbor, delivering it directly to the construction ramps. He even names the destination: Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu, the ancient name for the Great Pyramid. The diary reads like a work log. Spent the day transporting stone, loaded the boats at Tura, arrived at Akhet Khufu. It's not myth. It's not theory. It's a 4,500-year-old shipping manifest written by the man in charge of the operation. And it proves beyond doubt that the Egyptians used the Nile as a massive industrial transport system. For extremely heavy stones, they used double-hulled wooden barges. Ballast stones for stability. Multiple towing boats. Egyptians were master shipbuilders. They built 40-meter ships capable of carrying obelisks weighing hundreds of tons. During the annual flood, the water rose high enough to bring barges close to the building ramps. Water did the heavy lifting. Once the stone reached land, the real challenge began: lifting it uphill. For decades, people imagined a single giant ramp stretching to the top of a pyramid, but that idea never made sense. It would have required more material than the pyramid itself. The real answer came from a discovery in the eastern desert, at a place called Hatnub. The Hatnub ramp discovery. The breakthrough. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered a 4,500-year-old ramp system carved directly into the limestone quarry at Hatnub. This wasn't a theory. This wasn't a reconstruction. This was the actual engineering system the Egyptians used. The ramp had three key features. 1. A steep central ramp. Much steeper than anyone thought possible, far too steep for workers to simply drag a stone up by brute force. 2. Staircases on both sides. Cut directly into the bedrock, running parallel to the ramp. 3. Rows of deep post holes. These were the real revelation. Wooden posts were anchored into these holes, and ropes were looped around them. This created a multi-directional pulley assist system. Workers on the staircases pulled the ropes upward. Workers at the bottom pulled forward. The ropes wrapped around the posts multiplied the force. The system allowed stones to be pulled up much steeper inclines than previously believed. This wasn't primitive labor. It was mechanical advantage, thousands of years before the word mechanics existed. Archaeologists even found tool marks, rope grooves, and fragments of wooden posts, confirming the system was used repeatedly. The Hatnub ramp proves that Egyptians understood friction, understood force multiplication, used coordinated teams, and engineered ramps far more sophisticated than the old, straight ramp idea. It's the closest thing we have to a blueprint for pyramid construction. Rope-pulling teams, expanded. These weren't random laborers. They were organized into squads with names, leaders, and quotas, the same kind of organization described in the Diary of Mira. A single 800-ton block might require dozens of workers pulling from the staircases. Dozens more pulling from the base. Supervisors coordinating rhythm. Rope handlers adjusting tension. And engineers monitoring the posts and runners. This was industrial-scale teamwork. Levers and cribbing. Once the block reached the top of a ramp, Egyptians used long wooden levers to lift one side. Cribbing stacks, layers of wood, to hold the new height. Incremental lifting to raise the block inch by inch. Counterweights to control descent or fine adjustments. This is the same technique modern engineers use to move houses and locomotives. The Egyptians mastered it 4,000 years ago. Moving the stone was only half the job. Placing it with millimeter accuracy was the real art. Workers used plumb lines, A-frame levels, sight lines, copper chisels for micro-adjustments. Even with an 800-ton block, they could nudge it into perfect alignment using levers and small pivots. This wasn't brute force. It was engineering. The real story of how the Egyptians moved massive stones isn't about mystery, it's about human brilliance. They understood physics, hydraulics, material science, logistics, large-scale labor organization. They built a civilization that lasted 3,000 years using nothing but knowledge, teamwork, and determination. And honestly, that's far more impressive than any conspiracy theory. Why? If you enjoyed this breakdown of ancient engineering, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which ancient mystery you want to explore next. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't just about the past. It's about what humans are capable of.